Part 4. The Entity's Game. The darkness around us was suffocating, thick and impenetrable. It felt alive, seething with malevolence, pulsing in time with our ragged breaths. We stood frozen, barely able to process what we'd seen, our minds trying to make sense of the impossible, those eyes burning crimson, watching us from the void. "Hannah, get the light back on," I hissed, my voice barely a whisper. She fumbled in the darkness, her fingers shaking as she slapped the flashlight, willing it to spark to life. But no matter how much she tried, it remained dead, leaving us at the mercy of the darkness. A chill crept down my spine as I felt a faint breeze brush past my ear, carrying with it a soft, guttural whisper. It was indistinct at first, barely a breath, but as it grew louder, I made out the words. "Come closer, see." I took a shaky step back, heart hammering as the voice curled around me, each word seeping into my mind like poison. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the walls, threading through the darkness with a malicious joy. Max's flashlight flickered, its weak beam barely piercing the thick gloom. But in that brief flash we saw it again, the figure. Closer this time, just a few feet away. It was still shrouded in shadows, but its eyes blazed, unblinking, locked onto us with a hungry intensity. Max stumbled back, muttering under his breath, his bravado cracking, as he realized there was no reasoning with whatever this was. "Get away," he choked out, barely able to form the words. The figure moved again, its form a blur in the corner of my vision. It didn't walk or glide, it shifted, its body seeming to fold into the shadows before reappearing, each movement carrying it closer and closer. A wave of nausea washed over me as I realized the truth. It was playing with us, testing us, savoring our fear. This wasn't a ghost or a spirit bound to some ancient curse. It was something else entirely, something that had existed long before the tunnel was ever built. "Run," Hannah whispered urgently, grabbing my hand and yanking me forward. We bolted, sprinting back down the way we had come, or at least what we thought was the way. The tunnel twisted around us, each corner blending into the next, and with every turn I felt the layout shifting, morphing into a twisted labyrinth designed to trap us. The walls seemed to narrow as we ran, pressing in closer, so close that I could feel the rough stone scraping against my shoulders. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the sounds of our footsteps, the faint gasps of my friends, and the persistent, mocking laughter echoing through the darkness. We took a sharp turn, only to come to an abrupt halt. The figure was there, waiting for us. It was no longer shrouded in shadows. In the dim light of Max's dying flashlight, I saw its face, or rather the absence of one. Where a face should have been, there was only a blank slate of flesh, smooth and featureless except for those burning eyes, which bore into us with an unsettling intelligence. They held no emotion, only an insatiable hunger, a void that seemed to stretch beyond human comprehension. Max let out a strangled scream, turning to run back the way we had come, but the walls had shifted again, closing in, trapping us in a narrow passage, with the figure blocking our only exit. I could feel its gaze on me, its eyes tracing every inch of my soul, peeling back the layers, exposing every fear, every regret. It knew us intimately, and it wanted something. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, as if considering my question. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, it raised a hand, pointing to the ground at its feet. Hannah, breathing heavily, looked down, her eyes widening as she spotted what the figure was pointing at. There, scrawled in the dust, were words, written in a hasty, desperate hand, underscore. We tried. We failed. Now it's your turn, underscore. The message sent a jolt of terror through me, a realization that whatever this thing was, it had been trapping people here for generations, feeding off them, relishing their fear, their desperation. The lost expedition hadn't simply vanished, they had been devoured, consumed by whatever force dwelled within the tunnel. It's not going to let us leave, is it? Hannah's voice was barely a whisper, her face pale, eyes hollow with fear. The figure took a step closer, the ground beneath it darkening, as if absorbing its presence, leaving a blackened stain on the stone. I felt an overwhelming urge to look away, to close my eyes, and pretend this was all some terrible nightmare, but I couldn't move, couldn't tear my gaze from those burning eyes. Then, suddenly, the figure stopped, lowering its arm, its gaze shifting to something behind us. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, and I dared a glance over my shoulder. But as I turned, my heart dropped. The tunnel behind us was gone, replaced by an endless yawning chasm, a darkness so complete it felt like it would swallow us whole. And then, from within that darkness, I saw them, the faces. Dozens of faces half-formed and twisted in agony, their eyes wide and hollow, mouths open in silent screams. Each face flickered in and out of existence, as if trapped in some endless purgatory, forever bound to the darkness, begging for release. "We have to go," Max choked out, but his voice was weak, defeated. He knew as well as we did that there was nowhere to run. The figure began to laugh again, a hollow, rasping sound that filled the chamber, each note dripping with malice, echoing through the tunnel in a mocking symphony. The walls around us seemed to close in, and for a brief, terrible moment, I realized that we were going to end up like them, another set of faces in the dark, another set of eyes staring out from the void, waiting for the next unlucky soul to stumble into this cursed. But then, in the midst of our despair, Hannah did something I hadn't expected. She stepped forward, facing the figure with a defiance I hadn't known she possessed. "If you want us, come and get us," she said, her voice barely wavering. The laughter stopped. The figure cocked its head, as if taken aback, and for the first time it hesitated. That hesitation was all we needed. "Run!" Hannah screamed, grabbing my arm and yanking me into the darkness, back down the twisted corridors, away from the figure, away from the faces. As we hurtled deeper into the maze, hoping, praying that there was an end to this nightmare somewhere beyond the dark,